Hello everyone, Nobby here. Just a quick video to show you how to split a terrain and the terrain texture into smaller parts. Now, why would you do that? Well, there seems to be a problem loading some tracks into a set of KSeditor. Anything that seems to be involving large background textures, like the terrain texture, anything that seems to be using quite a large one of them, if you start painting terrain over the top of it, it seems to create a problem. It's something to do with virtual memory, I believe. So if you split the texture into smaller pieces, so instead of loading one giant texture you're loading 4 slightly smaller textures, it should be easier on the system, because it's easy for the system to calculate several smaller ones and one large one. So I'll show you how that's done. Now I've pre-made a test piece which I will show you. It's actually a stretch of the California highway. I've added a road. It's actually 3 roads joined together, but I've added the road and just the train. I haven't put in any other objects, but that really doesn't make any difference. What we're going to be doing is as if you had finished the track in this and you're ready to export, but you're worried that the textures will be too big for KSeditor to handle, so you just want to split it in a 3D application first. So I've actually already created this. I've exported it and saved it all and loaded it into my 3D application, which I'll show you. But there's the mesh for it as well. So what we're actually going to be doing is splitting it straight across that line and also pretty much straight up the middle. So we'll switch over to my 3D application, which is Lightwave. Now the buttons and the commands may be in a different place or called something slightly different, but the basic 3D principles all stand true in any 3D application. It doesn't matter if you're using Blender, 3D Max, Maya or anything else. The basic idea behind what we're doing should hold true in all of them. It's just a case of finding where the button is and what is the button called. So right, first off, let's just make sure. So this is what it looked like imported directly into my 3D application, and you get things like this, which are bits of road that it doesn't actually, no, they're not, sorry, forgive me, those are the start and pit points. So like AC start and AC pit, that's them there. Excuse me. So what we actually want to do is select everything that uses this texture. Now I can call up a statistics panel which shows me. So if we have a look, we've got all these different background materials. Now the reason for that is the AC starts and the AC pits all use the background texture as well, but we don't need it to. They can use anything. So we're not going to be including those in this. If you actually, most 3D applications have a parts window that lets you see all the different parts of the object. Now in mine it's this. Now as you can see, we've got grass 1, grass 1, and then we've got a few road pieces, then we've got all the AC start and AC pits and things like that. So we're not really interested in any of them, but we want to get rid of, I want to get rid of them. So first of all I'm going to do is just hide everything else that isn't one of the what I call system parts. So it's like your starts and your pits and things like that. If we have a look, they all use a different background material. We don't want that, so for the sake of this, and you could do it when you're ready to export as well, just give it a new material, and I'm going to call it something like starts, and we do that. So that's a new material. Now if we look, we've only got one material for that, and if we show everything, now when we look we can see there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parts that use background. Now the reason for that is we've got we've got grass and grass 1, which use background and background 1. Now the materials are all exactly the same. I don't know why it splits them into different materials, but it does. Now the other parts that use the background are this, this and this, which if we get close and have a look, what these are, you have a piece of road, you have the piece of terrain alongside it, and you have the grass trim. So actually I'll hide that one. So you have the road and the grass trim, which use grass edge, and in this case tarmac light. But the one that we need is that part, which is, if I show you there, actually I can put that one into the background layer so you can see it. Now those both use the background image, so if you select all of those pieces, you can give them a new material and just call it the original background. So they all still share exactly the same material settings, it's just you've only now got, no I don't want that, you've only got one background material, which makes it easier to work with. Now for the sake of showing you what we're going to do, I've actually tidied all this up because there's a lot of mess here. For this test I don't need to show you I don't need any of the AC starts or AC pits or anything like that, and all these parts don't need to be split like this. So I've actually gone ahead and cleaned mine up. This is stuff that you would generally do when you'd finished your track and you was tidying it up anyway, but I'll just show you. Right, so I'll close that one and I don't want to save it. Now it looks like it hasn't closed, but it has. This is a second object, this is the tidied up one. Now as we can see, we've got the main terrain, we've got just the trim along the side, the little grass strip, and the road itself. So we are only interested in the terrain and that trim along the edge that also uses the terrain. And all this is only using one material called background. So I know why. Right, this is the UV layout view. This is what the UV map actually looks like. Now it has 3 different UV maps, and I don't know what 1 and 2 are for. It might be detail and things like that, but we're actually only interested in UV 0, which looks tiny, but it's not, because that is the bounds of the UV layout, and there's the background within it. If I zoom in a bit, you can see it doesn't actually use a lot of the texture in this case. Yours might, it might stretch really close to the edges, which is fine, but exactly the same principle will hold true. So what we're going to want to do, that's the middle. So we're going to want to split the actual texture, the picture, and the terrain straight down the middle and straight across the middle there, horizontally. So we'll have 4 parts of the terrain and we'll have 4 parts of the texture. And we want to do that to both the main terrain and the little bit of side trim of terrain. So what we will do, first I'll come in from the side. Now as you can see, that's the center point, but this polygon is on both sides of that. So it's like all this is the top end, all this is the bottom end of the texture. But these polygons are bang in the middle. So what we need to do is split it straight down that line, split the entire mesh. So I will do that first. Straight down the middle. So that's split that way. And then I will come in from the side. Now it looks like it's already split down the middle. The other view was looking from the front. This is looking from the side. Now these polygons are split, but the ones on the trim aren't. So we need to make sure everything's split there as well, which is that. Now in this program, that command I've just used is called the knife, but it might be called split or unweld or something like that. You'll just have to find out what that command is in your 3D application. Now what we can do is select, actually what I will do is combine that trim, cut that, paste it into there. It'll make it easier because then we're only working with one object rather than rather than 2. I'll just make sure all those parts are merged, that's fine. Right, so what we will do is, first of all we shall select from the back view just make sure we are selecting only half of them, or rather everything that's on the one side. So there we go, that's everything. So I'll cut that and I'll paste that to a new layer. In your program that might be creating a new part or a new sub-object or something like that. I'm not sure what it'll be called, but we've split that across 2. And actually if I show both of them again and I come in from the side this time and I will select all of that. I hope I got that the right way round. And we'll just deselect the ones that are over the line, because we don't want them. Just make sure that's all of them. I'll zoom in really close. Yeah, that's got them all. Then if we select, there we go, and we can paste that to a separate layer. So now we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 parts. So now that we've got the 4 parts, we need to split the texture. So I'll load Photoshop, make sure we've got the exact center, There we go. Now first of all, I'll copy and paste everything so we got a new layer, and delete the background layer just so it's easier to work with. Hang on, something's not right there. That's better. 2048. I hadn't got that guide sat in the middle. 2048, and I'll do cut and paste. And do the same for those. Cut and paste. Move it back into place. Cut and paste. Move that back into place. Right. So this image was 40. Hang on, 24. 4092, I think. Hang on, let me just check. $40.96. Sorry. So half of that will be 2048. So if we create a new texture, call it 2048. Background contents, that'll do. Right. So first of all, I'm going to cut that one. Paste that. Merge it down. Then save that as... where did it go? Documents. Racetrack Builder. Test, export, test, textures. Map 1. Save. Then we take the other layers. Paste one of them in. Merge. 2. And do the same for these. Map 3. And then finally, oh, I didn't select the layer. There we go. Merge those layers and save as map 4. Okay. So we can close that. We can close that and don't save it. And we don't need Photoshop anymore. Now, image editor. Documents. Racetrack Builder. Test. Export test. Texture. Those 4. Load those in. So that's number 1. If we look, that's not the right size. So this is only using a little bit of the water. Now it's okay because this is still using the old material, which was just background. But what we need to do now is create 4 new different materials and tell them all to use, tell each one to use one of the different background images. Okay, so as we split it in the middle, the texture and the mesh, we know that if you look down here, when I'm right in the corner where that is, you can see that my UV value is 50 and 50, so that means I'm smack in the middle. So because this texture now starts from there, because that was the center point of the texture. If we move that up into the corner, now this is the part that makes the difference. You need to scale or size the UV map. Now, because we cut everything in half, we need to scale it by 200%. So it makes it there. Now, it looks odd there, don't worry. But what I will do is Q and give that map 1. Now, I'm just playing about here, don't worry about that. So these are the material settings for this. Projection is using UVs, it's using UV 0, and this is going to use map number 1. Now that's better, that fits properly. So now we'll go on to map 2. We'll show that one. Is that the right one? Yes, right. So this one starts there, which is the center, and the texture starts there. So move your texture into place and then size it by 200% again. Whoop, that was a little big. That can't be right. Oh, no, yes it is. I think. Right, let's just try this. Map 2. I'll copy material 1 over to material 2. Just alter it to the right one. Yes, it is. Oh, actually, yes it is, because look, the road matches the placement of the road in the texture. So that's okay. Now on to number 3. Now this was... Yes, this one starts from there, as that's the center. So it starts from there, the texture starts from there. So we move those into place and scale it up by 200%. There we go, and we can see it lines up with the road. We'll give that number 3. Now all I'm doing here is just creating a new material and telling it to use a new texture. That's all it's really doing. And then part 4, which starts... Where does that start? Yeah, right. So that starts there in the center, which means the texture starts there. So put that there. Scale that up by 200%. Now again, it looks like it's not really using a lot, but this wasn't. We'll give that a new material, number 4. Okay, now hopefully when we show all these 4 parts, it should look like a whole terrain still. Yes, look at that. So there you go. Oh, hang on. So yeah, there we go. We now have 4 parts of terrain, and each one is using a different texture map. So all you need to do now is re-export as FBX again. Remember to copy your 4 new textures into the same folder, and when you load that into KSeditor, it's now going to load 4 2048 images rather than one 4096 image. So that should be it. That's all you need to do. You shouldn't need to do this with roads or barriers or anything like that, because they all use fairly small textures, so you won't have that problem with virtual RAM. It should just be the actual background texture, what's used for the terrain. But that should fix the problem. So there you go. Have fun and go create some tracks, you little track monkeys. Bye.